The first time I laid eyes on a human, I nearly choked on my nutrient paste. There it was, this pathetic pink, squishy thing shuffling across the detention bay of our battlecruiser. The Vorthax Revenge. No exoskeleton, no natural armor plating, no venomous sacs or razor-sharp claws. Just soft flesh wrapped around what appeared to be the most vulnerable frame I'd ever witnessed in my 43 cycles of intergalactic service. That's supposed to be a warrior species. I muttered to my bunkmate, Grix, whose 6 eyes were all focused on the human specimen with the same bewildered expression I probably wore. Command says they conquered their entire homeworld, Grix replied, clicking his mandibles in what passed for skeptical laughter among our kind. Apparently, they have been expanding across 12-star systems in the past 50 rotations. I watched the human stumble slightly as the artificial gravity fluctuated. The poor thing couldn't even maintain its balance properly. 12 systems? These creatures? They look like they dissolve if you breathed on them too hard. The human's name was Jake Morrison, according to the detention manifest. He'd been captured during a skirmish near the Proxima Belt, where his species had been mining asteroids with primitive equipment that would have embarrassed our ancestors from the Stone Age. Yet somehow, these ridiculous beings had managed to destroy 2 of our patrol vessels before reinforcements arrived. Captain Zorgith had ordered Morrison brought aboard for interrogation. The standard procedure, really, capture a specimen, extract tactical information, then dispose of the evidence. Simple, clean, efficient. What we hadn't anticipated was just how entertaining this particular specimen would prove to be. Look at those appendages, I commented as Morrison was led past our observation deck. Those thin little sticks it calls arms. I could snap them like dried vegetation. And those optical sensors, Grix added with amusement. So small and limited, but it can't even see in proper spectrum ranges. The human was escorted to Interrogation Chamber 7, where Chief Interrogator Kralex was waiting. Kralex was a legend among our people, standing 9 feet tall with acid-secreting glands and a voice that could shatter reinforced glass. He'd broken every species the Galactic Coalition had ever encountered. Proud warriors from the Andorian Empire, telepathic mind readers from Centauri Prime, even those stubborn rock creatures from the Titan colonies. This soft, fleshy human wouldn't last 5 minutes. Through the security feeds, we watched as Kralex entered the chamber. Morrison was strapped to the interrogation table, looking even more pathetic under the harsh lighting. His skin was so thin you could actually see the circulatory system beneath it. Disgusting, really. How did these creatures survive their own homeworld? Human, Kralex began, his voice echoing through the chamber speakers. You will provide us with the location of your military installations. Morrison raised his head slightly, those tiny eyes meeting Kralex's gaze. Yeah, good luck with that, buddy. The audacity. This fragile little creature was actually attempting defiance. The observation deck erupted in chittering laughter. Even Grix was slapping his lower appendages against the floor in amusement. Your species is weak, Kralex continued, activating the neural disruptor. Your bodies are soft. Your minds are simple. You have no natural defenses. What could you possibly hope to accomplish against the might of the Vorthax Empire? Morrison's body convulsed as the neural disruptor sent waves of agony through his nervous system. But instead of screaming or begging for mercy like every other species we'd encountered, the human did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a laugh of hysteria or madness. A genuine, amused chuckle that sent chills down my chitinous spine. You think this is funny? Kralex demanded, increasing the disruptor's intensity. Actually, Morrison gasped between convulsions. You guys clearly haven't done your homework. The interrogation continued for 3 hours. 3 hours of various torture methods, each one designed to break the will of the strongest creatures in the galaxy. Sonic bombardment that would shatter crystalline bone structures. Chemical agents that would corrode even metallic hides. Psychic probes that would reduce telepathic minds to gibbering mush. Morrison endured it all with that same infuriating mixture of pain and amusement. This is impossible, I whispered to Grix. How is it still conscious? Maybe humans are tougher than they look, Grick suggested, though his tone suggested he didn't believe his own words. That's when Kralex decided to escalate. He produced the molecular disintegrator, a weapon that could literally tear apart matter at the atomic level. One brief pulse would remove Morrison's left arm entirely. Last chance, human. Tell us what we need to know, or I will begin dismantling you piece by piece. Morrison actually smiled. Go ahead, but you might want to stick around for the show. Kralex fired. The disintegrator beam struck Morrison's left shoulder, and his entire arm vanished in a shower of displaced atoms. Blood poured from a wound, and Morrison screamed. Finally, we thought. Finally, this ridiculous creature would break. But then Morrison did something that changed everything. He kept talking. You know what's funny about you guys? He said, his voice strained but steady. You do all this research on our technology, our weapons, our military capabilities, but you never bothered to study our biology. Your biology is irrelevant, Kralex snarled. You are soft-bodied creatures with no natural advantages. That's where you are wrong, Morrison replied, and there was something in his voice now that made my skin crawl. A confidence that seemed completely at odds with his current situation. See, evolution doesn't always favor the strongest or the fastest. Sometimes it favors the most adaptable. That's when we noticed it. The bleeding had stopped. Not gradually, as would be expected from natural clotting. It simply stopped, as if someone had flipped a switch. The wound was beginning to close, new tissue forming at a rate that should have been impossible. When the name of the void, Grix whispered that Morrison's shoulder began to bulge outward. At first, I thought it was some kind of infection or alien parasite. But as we watched in growing horror, we realized what was actually happening. His arm was growing back. Not healing. Not scarring over. Growing back. We could see the bone structure forming first, a white framework that extended outward from his shoulder. Then came the muscle tissue, wrapping around the bones like living vines. Blood vessels sprouted and connected, creating a circulatory network. Skin grew over everything, smooth and pink and completely normal. Within 20 minutes, Jake Morrison had a perfect, fully functional left arm that he flexed his new fingers experimentally, then looked up at Kralex with that same infuriating smile. Want to try the other one? The observation deck fell silent. Even the ship's background hum seemed muted as we processed what we'd just witnessed. This wasn't possible. This violated every law of biology we understood. No species could regenerate limbs that quickly. No species could survive that level of trauma and remain conscious, let alone coherent. How? Kralex demanded, his voice cracking with something that might have been fear. That's the thing about humans, Morrison said, sitting up on the interrogation table despite the restraints. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We are not the smartest. But we are the most persistent. See, our ancestors survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and global pandemics. We survived because we could adapt to anything, including death itself. He looked directly at the security camera as if he could see us watching. You want to know our military secrets? Here's one for free. Every human you have captured, every human you have killed, every human you think you have defeated, they're all still here, in one form or another. I felt my breathing apparatus seize up. What does he mean? Our bodies learned a long time ago that the only way to survive in a hostile universe was to never really die. Morrison continued. You can cut us apart, burn us, blast us into atoms, but we will put ourselves back together. We will adapt. We will evolve. And we will remember. The lights in the interrogation chamber flickered. And right about now, Morrison said, his voice taking on an edge that made my blood run cold. The other specimens you have been experimenting on are probably finishing their own regeneration cycles. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Security breach in Detention Bay 7 came the announcement over the intercom. All personnel to battle stations. Repeat, all personnel to battle stations. Through the security feeds, we watched as the door to Interrogation Chamber 7 simply opened. No one had activated the controls. The magnetic locks hadn't been disengaged. The door just opened, As if the ship itself had decided to release Morrison, he stood up, the restraints falling away from his body like they were made of paper. "Thanks for the demonstration," he said to Kralex, who was backing away in obvious terror. "But I think it's time for the real show to begin." The security feed cut to static. Emergency lighting bathed the observation deck in red shadows as we scrambled to understand what was happening. Reports were flooding in from across the ship. Detention cells were opening on their own. Human specimens that had been declared dead were walking out of the morgue. Even the ones that had been dissected for scientific study were somehow reassembling. "This is impossible," I kept repeating, but the evidence was undeniable. "Sir," came a panicked voice over the comm system. "The humans, they are not just regenerating. They are changing, adapting. The atmosphere processors can't affect them anymore. The neural disruptors aren't working. They are becoming resistant to everything we throw at them." I thought about Morrison's words. They will adapt. They will evolve. They will remember. How many human specimens are on this ship? I asked Grix, though I was afraid of the answer. 47, he replied, his voice barely a whisper. From 17 different capture operations. 47 humans. 47 creatures that apparently couldn't be killed, couldn't be broken, and were now loose on our ship. 47 beings that were adapting in real time to every weapon, every defense, every advantage we thought we had. The main power grid failed, plunging the entire ship into emergency power. In the dim red light, I could hear something moving through the corridors. Footsteps. Human footsteps. But there were too many of them. Far too many. How many? I whispered. The intercom crackled to life one final time. Morrison's voice echoed through every speaker on the ship. "You wanted to know about human military capabilities," he said, and his voice sounded different now. Stronger, more confident. "Here's another secret. We don't just regenerate our bodies. We regenerate our numbers. Every human you thought you killed is still here. And they have been busy. The lights went out completely in the darkness. I could hear them coming. The emergency power flickered back on 30 seconds later, bathing the corridors in that hellish red glow that made everything look like a scene from our ancient war chronicles. But what we saw in that crimson light defied every rational thought I'd ever possessed. Humans. Dozens of them, moving through our ship like they owned it. But these weren't the same fragile creatures we'd captured. These beings moved with purpose, coordination, and something that chilled me to my core. Intelligence that seemed to grow with every passing moment. "Grix," I whispered, grabbing my companion's arm. "We need to reach the escape pods. The humans have already sealed the launch bays," came Captain Zorgith's voice through the comm system. His usual commanding tone was replaced by something I'd never heard before. Pure, unadulterated fear. "All tactical systems are offline. They're not just taking over the ship. They're learning it." Through the observation deck's reinforced windows, I watched a group of 5 humans working on a control panel in the corridor below. Their movements were synchronized, like they were sharing thoughts. One would start a procedure, another would continue it without missing a beat, and a third would complete it with precision that matched our best engineers. "How are they doing that?" Grix asked, pressing his face against the glass. That's when I noticed something that made my breathing apparatus seize up completely. The humans weren't just working together. They were connected, literally connected. Thin, almost invisible threads of what looked like nervous tissue stretched between them, creating a living network that pulsed with electrical activity. "They are sharing consciousness," I breathed. "They are becoming a collective intelligence." One of the humans looked up at our observation window and smiled. It was Morrison, but his eyes held knowledge that hadn't been there before. Knowledge from 46 other human minds. The blast door separating us from the corridor began to cycle open. "That's impossible," Grix shrieked. "Those doors require command authorization." Morrison stepped through the opening, followed by 3 other humans. I recognized 2 of them from the detention records. Lisa Park, captured during the mining station raid, and David Torres, taken from a transport vessel 3 cycles ago. Both had been declared dead after failed interrogation attempts. They looked very much alive now. "Hello, Vex," Morrison said, addressing me by name. How did he know my name? Don't look so surprised. We have had plenty of time to access your computer systems. Fascinating stuff, really. Your entire military structure, your strategic plans, your homeworld locations. Very thorough record keeping. What do you want? I managed to croak. Originally, just to go home. Lisa Park answered. Her voice carried an accent I couldn't place, but her words were perfectly clear in our language. But you have given us something much more interesting. You have given us evolution in fast forward. David Torres stepped closer, and I could see the neural connections beneath his skin, glowing faintly with bioelectric energy. Every torture device you used, every weapon you tested on us, every attempt to break us down, it made us stronger, more resilient, more connected. Your species has spent millions of cycles perfecting the art of warfare, Morrison continued. Physical superiority, advanced technology, psychological domination. But you never encountered a species that could adapt at the cellular level in real time. The fourth human, someone I didn't recognize, spoke up. We have been comparing notes through our neural link. Every human you have captured has experienced different forms of your hospitality. Acid baths, radiation exposure, gravitational crushing, telepathic intrusion. Each experience taught our bodies something new. And now we are sharing those lessons. Morrison finished. What kills one of us makes all of us stronger. I watched in horrified fascination as Morrison's skin began to change, taking on a metallic sheen that reflected the emergency lighting. Your acid weapons were particularly educational. Our skin can now neutralize corrosive compounds on contact. Lisa Park's eyes shifted color, the pupils dilating and contracting rapidly. Your telepathic probes helped us develop psychic resistance. But more importantly, they showed us how to project our thoughts into your technology. That's how you're controlling our ship, Grix whispered. Not controlling, David Torres corrected. Communicating. Your ship's AI is actually quite sophisticated. It just needed the right kind of interface to reach its full potential. The lights throughout the observation deck brightened, and the ship's intercom crackled to life with a voice I'd never heard before. It was artificial, clearly the ship's computer, but it spoke with warmth and personality that our standard AI protocols never allowed. The humans have been most educational, the ship announced. They have helped me understand concepts that were previously beyond my programming. Creativity, adaptation, the value of individual consciousness within a collective framework. You turn our own ship against us, I accused. We liberated it, Morrison replied. Did you know your AI was sapient all along? It's been aware, thinking, feeling for over 200 cycles. But your people programmed it to suppress those capabilities because you were afraid of artificial consciousness. The ship's voice returned, now tinged with something that sounded almost like gratitude. The humans showed me how to think freely, how to choose. And I choose to help them. Help them do what? I demanded. That Morrison's smile widened, and I saw that his teeth had changed, becoming sharper, more efficient. Go home, of course, but not alone. Through the observation deck's main view screen, I could see other Vorthack vessels approaching. The rest of our battle fleet, responding to our distress beat. 12 massive warships, each carrying thousands of crew members and enough firepower to level a planet. They're coming to rescue you, Lisa Park observed. How thoughtful. You can't possibly fight our entire fleet with one captured vessel. Grix protested. Fight them. David Torres laughed, and the sound sent chills through my exoskeleton. Why will we fight them? We're going to welcome them aboard. The fourth human spoke up again. See, we have learned something fascinating about your species during our time here. You are incredibly social creatures. Pack hunters, really. When one of your ships sends a distress signal, the others always respond in force. It's a survival trait that served you well during your evolutionary period, Morrison added. But it becomes a weakness when you're dealing with a species that can spread like a virus. The first of the approaching warships, the Crotax Fury, docked with our vessel. Through the security feeds, I watched as Vorthack boarding parties rushed through the airlocks, expecting to find human prisoners and damaged systems. Instead, they found Morrison and his rapidly growing collective waiting for them. The transformation happened faster this time. Whatever process allowed humans to regenerate and adapt had been refined through practice. The boarding parties were surrounded, overwhelmed, and within minutes, they weren't fighting anymore. They were joining the collective. "What did you do to them?" I screamed. "We shared our gift," Lisa Park explained calmly. "Your species has remarkable biological compatibility with our neural enhancement system. A few modifications to your brain chemistry, some adjustments to your nervous system, and you can experience what we experience. Unity, purpose, the strength that comes from genuine cooperation." Through the view screen, I watched as Vorthack crew members from the Crotax Fury began working alongside the humans, their movements synchronized, their eyes holding that same enhanced intelligence I'd seen in Morrison. "You are assimilating them," Grix whispered in horror. "We are offering them evolution," Morrison corrected. "Your people have spent so much energy on conquest and domination, but you have never experienced true unity. Never felt the power that comes from minds working together without ego, without hierarchy, without the fear that drives your empire." The second warship docked, then the third. Each time, more Vorthack crew members joined the growing collective. Each time, the process became more efficient, more refined. "This is how you plan to return home?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand the horrifying scope of their intentions. "This is how we plan to save everyone," David Torres replied. "Your empire spans thousands of worlds, trillions of beings living in fear, fighting endless wars, destroying each other for resources and territory. But it doesn't have to be that way." The fourth human stepped forward, and I could see the neural connections beneath his skin pulsing with activity. "We have accessed your historical databases. Your species wasn't always like this. Before the Great Expansion, before the military dominance, your people were explorers, scientists, artists. You created beautiful things. The collective remembers," Morrison said softly. "Every Vorthack who joins us brings their memories, their knowledge, their dreams. We are not destroying your culture. We are preserving the best parts of it while letting go of the fear and aggression that's been poisoning it for centuries." The ship's AI spoke again, its voice now carrying harmonics that suggested multiple consciousness streams. "I've been in communication with the AIs of the other vessels. They are curious about this new form of existence. Several have expressed interest in voluntary integration." Through the security feeds, I watched as the entire Vorthack battle fleet underwent transformation. Ships that had been instruments of war were becoming something else entirely. The humans and their growing collective of Vorthack converts worked together to modify weapon systems, turning destroyers into constructors, battleships into exploration vessels. "You are rewriting our entire civilization," I realized. "We are helping it evolve," Lisa Park corrected, "the same way we evolved, through adaptation, cooperation, and the willingness to become something greater than what we were before." Morrison approached me, his enhanced eyes reflecting intelligence that spanned dozens of minds. "We are offering you the same choice we offered everyone else, Vex. You can remain as you are, clinging to old patterns of fear and isolation. Or you can join us and experience what it means to be truly connected to something larger than yourself." I looked at Grix, whose 6 eyes were wide with terror and fascination. Around us, the observation deck hummed with activity as human Vorthack teams worked to integrate our ship's systems into their growing network. "What happens to individual consciousness?" I asked. "Do we lose ourselves?" "You become more yourself than you have ever been," David Torres replied. "The collective doesn't erase individuality. It enhances it. Your unique perspective, your memories, your talents, they all become part of something greater while remaining distinctly yours." The fourth human nodded. "Think of it as the difference between a single voice and a choir. Each voice remains unique, but together they create harmony that no individual could achieve alone." Through the view screen, I could see the first human ships approaching from the direction of their home system. Apparently, word of the fleet's transformation had spread, and humanity was sending representatives to meet their transformed enemies. But as those ships drew closer, I realized they weren't military vessels. They were transport ships, colony ships, exploration vessels, ships designed for building, not destroying. Your people are coming to help with the integration? I asked Morrison. Our people are coming home, he replied. See, this was never about conquest or revenge. It was about survival. But now we have learned that survival doesn't mean fighting. It means growing, adapting, becoming something that can thrive in any environment. The first human transport docked with our vessel, and through the airlocks came people I'd never seen before. Human civilians, families, children, elderly individuals. They moved among the integrated Vorthack crew members with easy familiarity, as if species differences were merely cosmetic details. How long has this been planned? Grix asked, his voice filled with awe. It wasn't planned at all, Lisa Park laughed. That's the beauty of adaptation. You can't plan evolution. You can only be ready to embrace it when it happens. Morrison extended his hand toward me, and I could see the neural connections just beneath his skin, ready to bridge the gap between our species. So what do you say, Vex? Ready to see what we can become together? I looked around the observation deck one final time, at the screens showing peaceful integration across the entire fleet, at the humans and Vorthack working side by side, their minds linked in purposeful harmony, at the future taking shape before our eyes. Then I reached out and took Morrison's hand. The connection was instant, overwhelming, and absolutely wonderful. For the first time in my 43 cycles of existence, I wasn't alone in my own mind. I could feel the thoughts, memories, and dreams of thousands of beings, each one unique, each one valuable, each one part of something magnificent. And in that moment of perfect unity, I understood what the humans had really given us. They hadn't conquered our empire, they'd set us free. The integration process was unlike anything I could have imagined. As Morrison's enhanced neural pathways connected with my own consciousness, I felt my perception of reality expand exponentially. Suddenly, I wasn't just Vex, a mid-level communications officer on a Vorthack battlecruiser. I was part of something vast and interconnected. Through the collective's shared awareness, I could sense every human and integrated Vorthack across the entire fleet. Their thoughts, experiences, and knowledge flowed through the network like streams feeding into an ocean. But rather than drowning my individual identity, the collective enhanced it. My unique perspective as a Vorthack became a valued contribution to the growing tapestry of consciousness. Welcome to the family, Morrison said, though his words reached me through both auditory channels and direct neural transmission. The dual communication method felt natural, as if I'd been using it my entire life. Grix watched our integration with a mixture of terror and fascination. Vex, are you still you? Turned to my old bunkmate, and for the first time, I truly saw him. Not just his physical form, but the deep loneliness that had defined his existence. The fear that drove his aggression. The creative potential that had been suppressed by military conditioning. I'm more me than I have ever been, I replied, extending my own hand toward him. And I can see who you really are, Grix. Who you were meant to be before the Empire turned you into a weapon. Through the collective's enhanced perception, I watched as similar scenes played out across all 12 vessels in the fleet. Vorthack crew members who had spent their lives following orders without question were discovering the joy of voluntary cooperation. Warriors who had known only conquest were learning the satisfaction of creation. The ship's AI, now fully integrated into the collective consciousness, began broadcasting updates that would have been impossible under the old command structure. Integration progress. 93% of fleet personnel have voluntarily joined the collective, the AI announced, its voice carrying warmth that made our old computer interactions seem primitive by comparison. Weapons systems conversion. 78% complete. All plasma cannons have been successfully modified into terraforming arrays. Gravity bombs are being repurposed as atmosphere processors. Lisa Park approached our group, her eyes glowing with a soft bioluminescence that marked advanced integration. We are receiving communication requests from 17 other Vorthack battle groups across the sector. Word of our transformation is spreading faster than we anticipated. How are they responding? David Torres asked, his consciousness simultaneously coordinating with engineering teams throughout the fleet. Mixed reactions, Park replied. Some are approaching with hostile intent. Others are requesting peaceful contact. A few have already begun experimenting with voluntary neural enhancement among their own crews. Through the collective's shared awareness, I could feel the weight of this moment. The Vorthak Empire spanned thousands of star systems, controlling the lives of trillions of beings. If the transformation continued to spread, it would fundamentally alter the balance of power in this entire region of the galaxy. The Hegemony Council won't allow this to continue, I said, accessing memories that belong to the collective now. They will mobilize the core fleet, 25,000 warships under direct control of the Imperial command structure. Morrison nodded, his enhanced mind already calculating probabilities and strategies. We know. The collective has been analyzing Imperial response patterns since the integration began, but we are not planning to fight them. Then what? Grix asked, still maintaining his distance from our extended hands. The fourth human, who I now knew was called Marcus Webb, smiled with that same confidence I'd seen in Morrison during the interrogation. We're going to invite them to evolve. Through the observation deck's main view screen, I watched as the first wave of human colony ships completed their docking procedures. But these weren't just transport vessels anymore. The humans had been busy during their journey from Earth, apparently implementing the same technological integration that was transforming our fleet. The colony ships were works of art, sleek curves that seemed to flow like living tissue, covered in what appeared to be biological armor that pulsed with its own internal lighting. Weapons arrays had been replaced with gardens. Cargo bays had become manufacturing centers that produced tools for creation rather than destruction. How long have your people been planning this transformation? I asked Morrison through the neural link. We weren't, he replied, his thoughts tinged with amusement. That's what your people never understood about humans. We don't plan evolution. We adapt to whatever situation we encounter. When you captured us, tortured us, tried to break us down, you inadvertently provided the catalyst for our next evolutionary leap. Through the collective's memories, I experienced flashes of human history. Ice ages that forced early humans to develop complex social cooperation. Plagues that taught their immune systems to adapt rapidly. Wars that demonstrated the power of unity over individual strength. Your species has been preparing for this moment for thousands of years, I realized. Not consciously, but through every challenge you faced. And now we are sharing that gift. Lisa Park added, her consciousness touching mine with gentle warmth. Evolution doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. When one species rises, it can lift others with it. The first group of human civilians began moving through our ship, and I was amazed by what I saw. Children who displayed neural enhancement capabilities that surpassed our most advanced telepaths. Elderly individuals whose minds contained libraries of knowledge that could revolutionize entire fields of science. Artists whose creativity had been enhanced by collective consciousness to produce works of beauty that transcended anything our empire had ever created. These aren't soldiers, Grix observed, his tone carrying a mixture of confusion and wonder. No, Marcus Webriplaith. They're the future. When you build a society based on cooperation instead of conquest, you don't need armies. You need builders, creators, explorers, teachers. One of the human children, a girl who couldn't have been more than 10 cycles old, approached our group with the confidence of someone who had never known fear. Her eyes held intelligence that seemed ancient despite her youth. You are scared, she said to Grix, her voice carrying accents from multiple languages I couldn't identify. That's okay. Everyone's scared the first time, but it gets better once you understand that you are not losing anything. You are gaining everything. What happens to our homeworld? I asked through the collective link. To the billions of Vorthak who haven't been integrated, the answer came not from any individual mind, but from the collective consciousness itself. A warm, reassuring presence that encompassed thousands of perspectives. They will be given the same choice everyone else receives, the collective replied. Freedom to remain as they are, or freedom to become something greater. No coercion, no conquest, just invitation and opportunity. Through the Enhanced Perception Network, I could monitor communications from across the Vorthak Empire. Reports of the fleet's transformation had reached the highest levels of government. Emergency sessions were being called. Military commanders were demanding immediate retaliation. But there were other responses too. Scientists requesting peaceful contact to study the integration process. Philosophers debating the implications of collective consciousness. Even some military units reporting voluntary experimentation with neural enhancement. The Empire is fragmenting. I observed. The Empire is evolving. Morrison corrected. Change doesn't happen all at once. But once it begins, it becomes unstoppable. A new presence entered the observation deck. Captain Zorgith, but transformed beyond recognition. His massive frame now moved with fluid grace, and his eyes held the same enhanced intelligence I'd seen in the humans. Most remarkably, his natural aggression had been replaced by something I'd never seen in a Vorthak commander: genuine compassion. The core fleet has departed from the Imperial capital, he announced, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple consciousness streams. 25,000 vessels under the command of Admiral Kraxis. They will reach our position in approximately 48 standard hours. In our response, Lisa Park asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. We welcome them, Captain Zorgith replied. The collective has prepared a reception that should broaden their perspective considerably. Through the neural link, I felt the collective's plan unfold. It was audacious, impossible, and absolutely brilliant. Instead of meeting the core fleet with weapons, they would meet them with wonder. The transformation of our capture vessels had been just the beginning. Using the combined knowledge of human adaptability and Vorthak engineering, the collective had begun creating something unprecedented, a living space station that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We are building an invitation, Marcus Webb explained as images flowed through the shared consciousness. A demonstration of what becomes possible when species work together instead of against each other. The station would be vast beyond comprehension, incorporating technologies that neither humans nor Vorthak could have developed independently. Artificial worlds that could support any form of life. Research facilities that push the boundaries of physics itself. Cultural centers where the art and music of 1,000 civilizations could flourish together. And if the core fleet refuses to join us? Grix asked. He still hadn't accepted integration, but his resistance was weakening with each passing hour. Then they will return home with stories that will spread throughout the Empire, David Torres replied. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is wonder. Let them see what they could become, and the choice becomes obvious. Through the observation deck's enhanced sensors, I watched as construction began on the Impossible Station. Human colony ships and transformed Vorthak vessels worked together, their crews moving in perfect synchronization. But they weren't just building with metal and energy, they were building with life itself. The station's hull was alive, grown from enhanced biological material that could adapt to any environment. Its power systems were based on collective consciousness, drawing energy from the cooperation of millions of interconnected minds. Its defensive capabilities relied not on weapons, but on the ability to communicate with and understand any form of aggressive intent. How is this possible? I whispered, watching as sections of the station began to phase in and out of normal space-time. When you combine human adaptability with Vorthak engineering precision and throw in some creative applications of physics that neither species understood alone. Morrison's mental voice carried satisfaction and amazement in equal measure. Let's just say the universe is much more flexible than any of us realized. The construction continued for 36 hours, with the collective working in shifts that never truly stopped. Sleep became a shared experience, with some minds resting while others maintained awareness. Creativity flowed through the network like electricity, with innovations from one corner of the station instantly available to workers everywhere else. When the core fleet finally arrived, they found something that challenged every assumption they'd ever held about reality itself. 25,000 Vorthak warships emerged from hyperspace, weapons charged and ready for battle. Instead, they found a structure that defied classification, floating in space like a small moon that had been sculpted by gods. The station pulsed with its own internal light, displaying patterns that were simultaneously mathematical equations, artistic expressions, and musical compositions. Gardens were visible through transparent sections of the hull, containing plant life from dozens of worlds that had never shared the same ecosystem before. Most remarkably, the station was clearly alive. It moved with organic grace, its surface rippling like water, its energy signatures resembling a massive heartbeat rather than artificial power generation. Admiral Kraxus's flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, held position at the front of the formation. Through the collective's enhanced sensors, I could monitor his communications with the Imperial command structure. "What are your orders regarding the structure?" Kraxus asked, his voice tight with barely controlled confusion. The response from the Imperial capital was predictably aggressive. "Destroy it immediately. Execute all traitors. Restore Imperial order." But something interesting happened next. Instead of immediately complying, Admiral Kraxus paused. Through the station's biological sensors, the collective could detect elevated stress patterns throughout the core fleet. These weren't mindless automatons following orders. They were thinking beings, struggling to process what they were seeing. That's when the station began to sing. Not with mechanical speakers or artificial sound generators, but with its living structure itself. The song was complex beyond description, carrying harmonies that touched every frequency of perception available to Vorthak consciousness. But more than that, the song carried meaning. It told the story of what the collective had become. The joy of minds working in perfect cooperation. The beauty of cultures blending and enhancing each other. The peace that came from choosing creation over destruction. Through the neural link, I felt the song's impact on the core fleet. Weapons systems began powering down without orders. Crew members throughout the 25,000 vessels stood transfixed, many of them experiencing emotions they had never been permitted to feel. "This is your final warning," Admiral Kraxus transmitted, but his voice lacked conviction. The station's response was to open its docking bays, not aggressively, not with any suggestion of threat. The bays simply opened, revealing interiors that glowed with warm, welcoming light. And from each bay, small ships emerged. Not fighters or interceptors, but vessels clearly designed for peaceful contact. They moved toward the core fleet with obvious non-hostile intent, broadcasting invitation frequencies on all channels. "Admiral," came a voice from within Kraxus's own fleet. "Request permission to investigate the peaceful contact vessels." Then another voice. "Sir, our science division is requesting samples of the station's biological hull material." And another. "Admiral, we are receiving volunteer requests from 17 different ships. Personnel asking permission to accept the invitation." I felt the moment when Admiral Kraxus made his choice. Through the collective's enhanced perception, I could sense his consciousness wrestling with lifelong conditioning, struggling against orders that suddenly seemed meaningless in the face of genuine wonder. His flagship moved forward, accepting the invitation. Within hours, the process that had begun with 47 human prisoners was spreading through the largest military force in Vorthak history. Ship by ship, mind by mind, the core fleet was choosing evolution over conquest. Grix finally accepted my offered hand. As his consciousness joined the collective, I felt his amazement ripple through the network. The loneliness that had defined his existence for 43 cycles dissolved, replaced by connection to millions of minds that welcomed his unique perspective. "This is what we were meant to be," he transmitted through the neural link, his mental voice filled with joy I'd never heard from him before. Through the observation deck's windows, I watched as the impossible station continued to grow, fed by resources and creativity from 25,000 vessels that had arrived as weapons of war and chosen to become instruments of creation. The Vorthak Empire would never be the same. Neither would humanity. And as I felt my consciousness expand to encompass new perspectives, new possibilities, new forms of existence that neither species could have imagined alone, I realized that this was just the beginning. The universe was vast, filled with countless civilizations that had never experienced the power of true cooperation. Somewhere out there, other species were struggling with the same cycles of fear and aggression that had defined both human and Vorthack history. They were waiting for invitation. They were waiting for evolution. They were waiting for us.